Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. So episode 213 before was a bag of shit. That was a bad episode I did. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, this is going to be, hopefully, episode 213. So I did an episode, we're going to try to redo it here because I think it's a really cool angle. Are aliens demons? Now, I recorded this once yesterday, thought it was great. Literally, I'm sitting here thinking I'm on a roll, and I play it back during edit, and I'm kind of going, I think this sucks. There's at least two gigantic, holes in it where I lost myself. I did get interrupted by goddamn telephone, so you can feel it right in the center. And that just kills a train of thought like crazy. And it was just someone said, it was like pulling nails. To get anything out of the thing, all these generalizations. So anyway, I'm going to focus here. So I'm thinking about this because it's a really tough one. This idea that it frustrates the living shit out of me to hear people go, did you hear that aliens are demons? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so let's back up. Because we're going to take this as almost a demons part 2. Because I've discussed demons in the past. We're going to go through that. And then we're going to talk about this. We're going to start off actually with the alien assertion, and then maybe we'll end back on the alien assertion at the end. There is a bit of overlap when we talk about the intent of aliens in general, because someone telling you that they're demons is really kind of rechartering their entire purpose for being here. But there are two people that are going to have this kind of conversation. The person who knows that we have not fucking discovered aliens and we have not developed any sizable level of communication with them, and we're all hopeful that one day that occurs, that the day the Earth stood still fucking happens at some point. And then there's this other side of the equation. You're a person that will say fucking anything to get attention. And they lie and they embellish. They're the great Frisbee out of the Twilight Zone. Because the second they made up a story around their friends and got someone to pay attention to them that would otherwise not have given them the time of day, they realized there was a mechanism to lie and sensationalize to get attention. And that is where we get a lot of this bullshit. But this episode name has the word demon in it. Okay. Newsflash to American white people. There's a lot of religions out there that don't have anything remotely associated with the devil or a demon. All right? So this is a purely Christian construct, right? And why does the devil need to exist in a bullshit story to begin with? Because white people in Rome wanted to extort behavior out of you. They have sold you this bill of goods that God is some complete prick who won't save you from this planet when you die. You're down here in this experience, so obviously he's not around if he exists, right? So there must be a place where he lives and a place where we live. And the whole idea is that if you want to get saved in this universe, then you got to go to these pasty white fuckers in the Vatican who have lied every step of the way. They've had paintings made where Christ is giving the key to the Pope, and then they marched everyone through Europe through this little annex building so they could see this photoreal painting of this moment when God gave the absolute authority to the Pope. There's a guy named Dr. Atwill, Atwill. He has done an amazing research project called Caesar Messiah. I think it's CaesarMessiah.com. But he has used Titus Flavius from Rome and the Flavius family, which is responsible for most of the gigantic genesis of Rome at a time when it was about to collapse, creating the Christian religion from scratch, cannibalizing 23 previous religions that had virgin births, death, and resurrection storylines. All right? Many of which did not have a devil. Some of them had weird characters like a Set that might carry sort of the anti-life arc. But he does something called typology, and typology is when you retell a story in a metaphorical way to identify with the previous story. So it would be as if you had the story of growing up in a small town and your house burned down and your bike got stolen and your girlfriend slapped you in the face and then you found the love of your life, the best house, and da-da-da. Well, they would typology is someone telling that story and making it all bigger than life and replacing characters. Maybe it's not even your name, it's some other really cool name, right? Like when Hollywood stars change their names to sound cooler. The story of Christ and the story of Titus Flavius are identical on at least 44 key points. The only difference is that Titus Flavius' life was documented in marble, and Jesus Christ's life is at best documented in the Dead Sea Scrolls. So one guy recorded it the moment it happened in a way that could never be erased, and the other guy is living on toilet paper for his story. So the demon accusation only exists in the mind of a full-fledged Christian. Be it Catholic, Protestant, Methodist, doesn't matter. That is the religion that really celebrates a good guy and a bad guy. Most religions that have bad guys in them, they're one member of several members, like the Egyptian gods, leaving us with Set. So the first absurdity is that, again, we don't have communication with aliens on a daily basis. Only people like Whitley Strieber say that that's what happens, right? So adding a label to something that is elusive to begin with seems like an extension of absolute ignorance and some attempt to gain attention. But again, it only exists in the minds of a Christian after you adopt this fictional paradigm of existence and you negate all the facts that are missing and all the facts that have been collected about this person who never existed. That gives you this paradigm of this fallen angel called the devil and da-da-da-da, right? If we live in a world where we are raised on a bunch of fictitious stories, which behave as the training wheels for religion, to then carry into our adulthood, meaning we carry bullshit magic and bullshit religion and just stories of how the universe works into the future as an adult, and then we try to operate as an adult. And then when you finally meet an adult who had the fucking courage to get out of that game, to do their math, to do their research, to do some logic, you get out of it, or they get out of it, and they live closer to God than you ever will. Because they're not accusing God of being a bastard. In their world, God isn't a wrathful creature that floods a world and turns people into salt. And, hey, when you get shit-faced and you're worshiping the golden calf, you don't die. You get a chance to sober up. And if there's going to be a game change from golden calf to 2 scrolls coming down the hill with this guy Moses, God's going to let you get a chance to get your ball bearings together before you get murdered, drunk as hell. So those of us who have removed ourselves from organized religion, which is nothing more than man trying to enslave man, there's nothing godly at all about organized religion. Nothing. Sure, there's some parables, but hey, newsflash to all the Christians. Most of your parables that were written in the Old Testament and the New Testament are in hieroglyphs in Egypt, thousands of years before your characters were fictionally brought together in one book. We have overgrown children living in this world pretending to be adults, and you wonder why the world's fucked? No one can deal with reality because you hurt my feelings, man. Do your research. You'll eventually pull out of the death spiral. And the nice thing is that if you ever thought, and again, I just want to repeat this, If you ever thought you were really close to God by going through the Bible, just remember, the first catalyzing event in the first goddamn story is someone talking to the devil. So whoever wrote the book wrote the most ironic first chapter that you could ever possibly read. The devil essentially told you where you were and that you're naked and that there's sin and all this other stuff. It wasn't until you talked to the devil that you had a menstruation and cramps and bad childbirth. Pull yourself out of that bullshit and live a normal life in the hand of God the entire time. You then can claim that God has infinite wisdom and infinite patience and love, and it will make sense all of a sudden. Because if you were to say those wonderful things about God and walk straight into the Bible and see all the wrath and the murder and the death and him trying to make parents kill their children and brothers kill brothers and Job getting tortured, his son having to come down and die and be resurrected, right? Then you have to recuse yourself from the intellectual logic pool of this universe. But what happens? What happens when you sit down in a room with a Christian and you start to speak logic, and you're not denying the existence of God whatsoever? Hey, look at everything that's alive. It's all beautiful. Every goddamn thing is beautiful. Every fish, insect, plant, animal, whatever. It's all gorgeous. This stuff was designed by something that is very alive, and there's no reason to believe that that being is passed on. But what happens? I've experienced this several times. And the funny thing is, I don't come at people this strong, ever. And once in a blue moon, once in 100 things, but usually around friends. But the Christian turns into a bully. The Christian turns into a bully, and we're talking. Some of them start to puff up their chest, and they start to get a kind of a mean face, and they start to raise their voice a little bit. And their whole thing is like, it's like trying to scold a child. And they consider any of us with our own brains children. And the irony is, they're the fucking baby. They're the baby that does not want to get rid of the cartoons and get rid of the stuffed animals and get rid of whatever the fuck they're doing. The candy that's all stuck inside the kitchen. Sometimes they get more physical because they feel like they're a fucking paladin for God, right? What you're telling them is that they've been had. Hopefully you're smart enough not to let them actually think that. You say, look, I understand why you believe what you believe. You were raised with that. What is your genetic ability to not believe something that you were raised to believe from birth? It's tough. I can say that I have been believing probably for the last 5 years that Jesus Christ never existed. But I will tell you that even when I came to that conclusion, the first couple of years were a little bit hard. There was this little bit of sort of subdermal neuron flow that was going, well, you don't really know that, do you? And eventually I finally said, yes, I know it. Right? According to the Bible, the entire fabric of this universe has been completely re-engineered from magic land to fucking real land, The printing press shut down messiahs completely. The cell phone shut down a bunch of UFO sightings. But I have to lay this foundation in a very firm way so we fucking grow up. This is the problem. People hate Donald Trump. And hey, man, I don't know if I have any opinions of the guy right now, but the one fucking thing this guy's doing, and he's just showing up like an adult with a bunch of fucking kids who've been running the goddamn place, like Nancy Pelosi, a John Podesta, a fucking Hillary Clinton. Children pretending to be adults. So let's get back to demons being aliens. All right. None of you have any steady contact with an alien. You don't. Because if you did, you would be the most useful human being on the surface of this planet. Perhaps one of the most useful human beings to ever live. You would be able to bring us information that we don't know. Help us to commune with them, right? To call them demons just pisses me off. Demons are demons and aliens are aliens, right? I have friends on Facebook And I watch their feeds from time to time. Obviously, those who are more active in their posts, you start to understand how they spend their day, what they ingest, what they don't ingest, where their opinions are politically, where their opinions are creatively. And probably about 4 or 5 months ago, a very close friend of mine's wife, who I know also pretty well, posted this fucking post, and it was a gray alien's face, but it had been subdued down to like a really dark graphite, and it was sort of wet, and again, like they twisted up the face and made it look really evil and demonic. And the article was all about how aliens are demonic. Okay. So then you flip over to the other side of the equation. So you got aliens of which we have no steady communication with. No one even claims to have steady communication with aliens besides Whitley Strieber. Honestly, I don't know any fucking human being on planet Earth that says they just willy-nilly visit him all the time and ass rape him every time he come by. That guy has had more visits than, Barack Obama to a bathhouse. But then you jump on the other side of this purely Christian construct of demonism. Yes, there are other religions that have various, again, dedicated resources for darkness. But a lot of them mature up to the point where they simply say, there is matter concepts and antimatter concepts. There's always a positive and a negative. For every positive we make, we have a negative. That's what physics does, But saying that an alien is demonic is like saying an ethereal particle is demonic, right? We're trying to find these things. We can seem to get a sense of their effect. Well, there's some Roswell crashes and some other things, and we see shit flying around Area 51 and all kinds of stuff flying in the sky, so we think that there's UFOs. They seem to operate intelligently. If something operates intelligently, you must give it some sort of, sentient capability, which you then call a species of some sort, and you keep moving on. So we think we have evidence of alien intervention. All right. But we immediately take the Hollywood spin, because what's going on is that the fucking UFO thing is dying. It's dying on the vine. Cell phones have utterly killed UFO sightings and the entire ufology movement. And so what do you do? What do you do to reignite that? Because you maybe sell UFO-shaped crystals, for all you fucking know, right? You put a new storyline on it that does exactly what they've done with the war in the Middle East. It used to be that we fought wars against people. The countries. This country declares war on you, and everyone's honorable, and they stand in rows, and they shoot themselves, right? Well, now what happens? We have these apparitions, fucking Al-Qaeda and ISIS and the Taliban. They're not any one country. There's just this big ambiguous cloud of negativity over there. And, you push on a cloud. You can't squeeze a cloud on the top of your tabletop, So what they do is they take this abstract concept that you then have no right to deny its existence because, it's all based on a faith-based system anyway. You have to believe in God in a particular way that makes you a Christian, and then you can believe in all of the constructs and made-up storylines within that realm, again, of which match at least 23 religions we've discovered prior to Christianity, of which none of them were called Jesus Christ. Does anyone care about this stuff? That we're hooked on fiction? You realize that back in the time of Christ, there were individuals who were hired to be the historical record keepers of various regions of Europe, especially Rome. Everyone who changed office, everyone who was persecuted, everybody that did anything was written down. And they like to tell you that there's a record of Christ being crucified. That record doesn't exist. They tell you that bullshit, but when you try to go find it, it doesn't exist. And a guy being crucified from Nazareth don't mean shit, okay? It's a town. People come from there and they commit a crime or whatever. Maybe they didn't even commit a crime. Romans don't like the way his face looks, and he gets crucified. Doesn't say anything about, and the Son of God, we killed him on Saturday. But you have to understand that for it was actually 300 years, we have found now over 120 documents written in various formats, from stone to papyrus to whatever we got to write shit in, mud tablets. And there's not a single mention of the movement of Christ. Well, according to the Bible, that shit was on fire. According to the Bible, 60 years later, they were writing the first versions of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the New Testament. I should only say the New Testament, not the Old Testament, right? When you go to court, someone has a choice. You either bring the facts to dispute the accusation against your client, but if it's all circumstantial hearsay, but the court is still willing to let it go to court, then you got to put a jury in the room and you have to make your case. And that's what we're doing here. The credibility of the very paradigm of demons and angels, of the Christian focus and path to God, I think doesn't have to be eradicated and said that it's completely untrue. But I'll tell you what, you got to reinvent your religion from scratch. Right? You cannot have a pedophile-ridden, Roman Senate-created belief system based on 23 other religions and say somehow just because you've created subsects of this particular religion, all of a sudden it's true. That doesn't make it true. That just makes it more elaborate. And a hoax that goes on for 2,017 years is probably going to be pretty badass, right? I mean, you got fucking bases covered, man. You have heard every argument against your religion, and you've got some little pigeonhole thing over here that is the way to reinterpret it so that it's real. The accusation of a demon and an alien being the same thing would essentially tell the rest of the world, if you believe that, then that means that you don't need any evidence of anything. Flat Earth, hey, just say you believe it. Don't worry about curvature. Don't worry about laser tests. Don't worry about anything. Don't worry about the South Pole. Don't worry about flight paths and planes. Just say it's flat and that's it. And then be a fucking bully if someone doesn't make you feel comfortable being fucking crazy. And I'm not saying flat earth people are crazy. I'm just saying a person who would believe something just sheerly out of will would be very close. Or a coward. What's interesting is that demons have very specific recorded behaviors and over time. Let's just give it all 100% truth. Okay. They wiggle into our souls and they make us kill people, fuck people, do whatever. That's how we experience demons. But aliens, well, they've got a pretty benign history. You take all of the stories of aliens and you combine them all into one book so you could read it sequentially from the beginning of time when we think aliens have arrived till today. In the past they were actually Nephilim and Anunnaki, and they were helping to enlighten man, like the monolith that shows up in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Only after 100 years of Hollywood demonizing these things and making them like The Thing, John Carpenter's amazing movie remake of The Thing, or his 1985 movie They Live, did we have fun with the story of aliens being negative. But what is the basis of an interesting twist in a conspiracy? It is that whatever you believe to be reality, you simply flip its polarity from positive to negative, and it's like a cheap little gag. Well, you know what they really are, don't you? What? They're evil. Okay, there you bought yourself 5-10 years more of whatever you're trying to do. But what is an alien? Technically speaking, anything that's not a human being that is operating at the conscious level that we have, that maybe is bipedal, quadrupedal, hexapedal, doesn't matter. They are aliens. They're either interdimensional or they're here with us and they walk around. Either they're 4 feet tall, 2 feet tall, 7 feet tall. They're reptilian, they're gray, they're covered in feathers. We don't care. They're not human, therefore they're alien. So I suppose in one track you could simply say demons are aliens, right? But the latest thrust is that the Greys are aliens. But the real thrust is that Greys are demons. That's what I've recently really heard about. Now, the reptilians, they have their own demonic thing that they want to do in raping humanity, which we'll get into. The thing is, this latest line of horseshit is really distracting people from paying attention to potentially what we need to pay attention to figure out where they really are, if they really exist. And what's really weird is 10 years ago, the conspiracy behind Greys had evolved to Greys being robots from heaven. There was all these stories and these beautifully done stories. And when you see a positive story, which is a potential conspiracy theory in a positive realm, they're easier to watch, they're easier to digest, and they're easier to flush because there's no threat model. But there was a couple folks, I don't think it was Whitley, but there was a couple folks that essentially said that they were captured, put into a mothership of some sort, and that they were being used to either provide sperm or provide eggs, and these greys were actually there assigning these glowing spheres, which were souls, into the embryos and giving them life, and that essentially the stork has now turned into a gray alien. And it was cute and it was funny, and that was about it. One or two people I came up with this idea, right? But what happens when you say they're demons? It's a completely different thing. Now, if you buy this idea, or if you can convince yourself, because you've got your mind wide open, which is good, you can't go to sleep at night very well because now you fear something. If you found out that the stork really delivered babies, then, they're for real. They fucking fly around, they drop you off in chimneys or in windowsills or door steps or whatever, you would think that's fun and that's cute and that's cool. Wow, I really thought that was just a cartoon from Warner Brothers back in the day. But if you thought that storks flew around and ate children, you wouldn't feel so good, would you? Now, what if someone starts the rumor and the stork has nothing to do with such a thing, but a bunch of idiots start killing storks until they're completely extinct because some douchebag was having some fun? But how could an alien race that really exists in physical form be classified as a demon? That would be if they did something to you that harmed you, or did something to you that you didn't want done to you, and there's nothing you can do to control it. Right? Just like we treat animals in testing laboratories. They don't want to be in there. They want to be in the jungle. They want to be running around in someone's domestic home being petted, or being pet and fed and taken care of and loved. But they're not. They're dying. I used to work for the pharmaceutical industry in the mid-90s, and I worked in a building that had animal testing downstairs, and I was very young, so I wasn't quite sure. I didn't have any faculties to really respond properly, but they used to back up these big semis full of dogs that they would get from pounds. And so instead of putting them down, they would go into testing. And there must have been, dozens and dozens of dogs going in. The whole building was just roaring with dog barking. And it took probably 2 or 3 hours for them to subdue, probably chemically, all of these animals so they wouldn't bark. And eventually it was quiet. And then who the hell knows what happened downstairs. You weren't allowed to actually see it occur. Like the truck pulled up and they just hermetically sealed the back door. It wasn't like something that employees could bump into because they knew it was such a touchy subject. What do you think those animals thought of humans? Those animals, if they could communicate, would definitely label us as demons. We're killing them, we're torturing them, we're poisoning them just to see what happens. All right. There's been a few folks, and Whitley Strieber's one of them, who said that eventually he broke into a conversation at one of his captive moments up inside the mothership and said, you can't do this to me. It's my right not to be anally probed. And his writing was that they responded to him and said, we can do whatever we want. Which, if they really sort of believe that sort of thing, and they were logical beings, they may not bother to reply. They may just do what they want. Whitley Strieber's book, Majestic, by the way, which was all about the 1947 Roswell crash, has Harry Truman, the president, forming the CIA to deal with this unidentified flying object thing and all these aliens that were landing on Earth, and he incubated up the storyline, cutting and pasting all these different stories from the Midwest, suggesting that aliens were capturing Americans. Right, the guy with all the anal probing problems in his life now writes a story that children aren't being abducted by fucking pedophiles. They're being abducted by aliens. Oh, well, I guess we don't have to worry about the child trafficking problems then, huh? But let's get at something a little bit deeper. Because, again, this accusation only needs to be debated for maybe 30 to 60 seconds. But what it reveals in the reverse engineering of its assertion is phenomenal. So we're Homo sapiens sapien, right? Okay. Now, your humble narrator believes that there's either a catastrophic misunderstanding of how evolution works, or we were dropped off and spliced with whatever was here because of the gigantic missing set of bones, probably 150 million years worth of missing bones, hominid bones, trying to bridge itself over to Homo sapiens sapien, etc. Watch other episodes to get up to date on this. But it is safe to say that regardless of how we got here, divinely created or dropped off by aliens, there were tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years where we had to hunt an animal every single day to eat. And then we realized if we hunted bigger animals, we had a way to hang up the meat and dry it out. You could eat it for a few days and it still had the protein and it had the ability to fill up your stomach, and so you didn't get unhealthy. But think about what it would take to wake up every single day and chase down an animal, find it, trap it, chase it, eat it. Eventually, we probably figured out how to capture a chicken and eat some eggs and figured out a way to put it on a hot skillet and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's way up the food chain. I think even fishing itself was probably one of the last things that we figured out how to do. And so deep inside the genetics of man, we have this primal man. If you watch the movie Altered States with William Hurt, you will see that primal man pop out. But what have we done in the last, say, 50,000 years? We've civilized a little bit, haven't we? We built up society. We built religion. And each step of the way, we agreed on, through formalization and externalization of our own personal beliefs, we pushed it into deities, we pushed it into idols, pushed it into people like Jesus Christ, and we taught ourselves back what we believe, and then we indoctrinate the new generations that come by to make sure they understand the Ten Commandments, common law, basic things. Not a bad thing, right? Unfortunately, it comes with a lot of other heavy lifting that we don't want to be doing. But now we have veneered the outside of this thing. For any of you who've eaten an M&M, it's the hard candy shell on the outside, but it's all that chocolate on the inside. Well, let's take the chocolate and make that the bare bones instinct to kill so that we can survive. Not kill each other, but kill animals. To go through the emotional arc of being angry and being excited and running and conquering and feeling the total high of being able to do such a thing. To come home and lay down the meat and the one that you love winks at you and says, "That's why I had your children, because you're a badass." And watch how sweet and wonderful I am when I prepare this, and take a look at our fun kids who look like both of us. That's what I do. Infinitely more complicated than what you do, but I still love you, right? Well, every 1,000 years that goes by, that candy shell layer gets thicker and thicker and thicker. Perhaps it gets to be like a jawbreaker, where it just has all kinds of wild flavors to get to the core. What am I talking about this for? I'm talking about this because every once in a while, like a volcano that erupts from the center of the plasma core of this planet, where the surface rock gets molten, gets thrusted around, and gets pushed out the top, we have moments where darkness comes out of us. Sometimes it's merely a thought. You have something that you think about that you know you would never act upon. And then there's sometimes you actually take action and actually physically do something that you would never do. It starts off, maybe you break something, then you maybe get in some fight, and then maybe you start, using a gun or a car as a weapon. Whatever. And so when this occurs, you do not feel like yourself when you wake up out of the coma. Just the pleasurable experience of sexual interaction with another human being, sometimes your mind can go in this place that doesn't make any fucking sense at all. You have no drugs in you, no alcohol in you, but you're still wanting to have sex. You're going to risk having impregnating someone or getting pregnant yourself. And the second you wake up out of out of that kind of drunken stupor of sexuality, you don't even recognize who you were, let alone yelling at a loved one and saying something you shouldn't say. And so we have this genetic thing that occurs every once in a while. The insides pop out to the outsides. Have you ever found it interesting that the people that are sort of nonsensically violent are also, in a lot of cases, nonsensically ignorant? Right? It's 75 to 85 is a docile, mentally retarded human being. From 85 to 95, you have a violent, mentally retarded person. Meaning they're slow. They don't process things properly. They're impaired. It might be disturbing for you to know that the police officers of the United States of America now cannot exceed 105 intelligence. So 95 to 105 is where all the law enforcement officers have to fall in today's applications. So what do you do when you find yourself behaving in a way that doesn't make any sense? When you feel like you have two personalities, but they both answer to the same name. They just want completely different things, and they need to resolve things differently, right? Your calm self can resolve with a calm mind, and everything's okay. And then when you get pissed off, something clicks and you go nuts. And some of you guys are 6 foot plus, and you've got great muscular bodies, and so when you go a little bit berserk, you cause a lot of fucking havoc, man. And some folks are a lot smaller, and they can create as much havoc as they possibly can, and they can barely put a contusion on another human being's body. Well, there's something called scapegoating. Scapegoating is a technique that is used by the mind to make sure that it doesn't create a feedback loop of negativity that is essentially a regretful record of the past. Once something becomes your past, there's very little you can do to get rid of it. Now, if you offend someone or make someone angry, you can always apologize and try to explain yourself. Maybe give it some time before you go right back in to do that. But if it's something that you did all by yourself, the mechanism by which one escapes this horrible feedback loop is called scapegoating. Scapegoating happens on the personal, psychological level. You will scapegoat an inanimate object as the reason why something didn't work right, or a friend, or a loved one. But then there are societies that scapegoat other societies, so it happens at a sociological level as well. It's that frickin' other race that causes all the problems in the world. Sometimes there's truth to it, sometimes there's not, but there's nothing really consistent about the process. The construct of a demon is merely a way to put these eruptions of nonsensical, violent, and negative outbursts within the human body into some anthropomorphized container that is then only held up by a paradigm of religion. That's what a demon is. What I think would be very interesting is to survey the world of, I guess you would say, people of 100 IQ and higher, and ask them if they believe if aliens exist. If somewhere out in the universe, whether it be a firmament dome or some, heliocentric universe, do you believe that there are other beings living somewhere else other than Earth in flesh and bone? Be it insect-looking, be it human-looking, do you believe? And I think you'd have a ton of people say yes. But if you were to survey the same group of people and say, well, do you believe that there's a God who has these children who are considered angels? They wear wings, they fly around, they do all kinds of wild stuff. And he also allowed this equally negative faction, almost equal to his own power, to create havoc, fear, suffering. I doubt you would get the results back that you were looking for if you believe that aliens are demons. Now, when you break down angels existing and demons existing as their counterparts, that God has this bizarre arena that he has created, and it's almost as if he can't stop them. Oh gosh, once I find the devil, maybe I'll ask him to leave, No. Okay, whatever holds this universe together knows the entire universe. It does, whether it be science and just straight up particles floating in space that happen to create us with consciousness, or consciousness creates it, or there's a God, a single God or multiple gods that all report to each other. Who knows, right? It would seem that if you were to talk to the folks that make YouTube videos about the subject matter, the demons are absolutely everywhere all the time. Yet when you parse the actual deed in the moment of what they accuse to be a supernatural demon creature, and you start to move in, especially without the constraint of a Christian paradigm, and you move in and simply go, no, these are just a bunch of really, chemically screwed up human beings that are doing this. A demon is only necessary, even in theory, when you have something that is a phenomenon, something that is unexplained, that seems to go in a really negative way. And there's no plausible scientific alternative to explain it. And I don't mean the pop science that we hear, I mean real science, right? Where people like us parse everything. But you don't hear about the angels, do you? They don't do shit. I mean, they're almost non-existent. Sure, if something good happens in your life, you may want to pass a buck over to an angel and say, my God, that big rig came at me and I hit the brake, I saw it, it hit 20 other cars and killed 50 other people, but it didn't kill me, so God likes me more than those other 50 people. That's what I always hear all the time. A couple of years ago, I was dealing with some friends of mine that had relatives that were sick and passed. And then I have friends that have relatives that got sick and got, fully recovered. And the ones that fully recovered kept telling me how they said prayers. They prayed and prayed and prayed, and not realizing that my other friends did the exact same thing. Except one of my friends lost their relative, the other one got theirs to stay a little bit longer. And it's such a sick insinuation that God is making choices like that. Nope. I don't want this person up here with me. Nope, that person can stay down there with you, whatever. And then there's my friends that think that more prayers actually create better, outcomes. And hey, I pray like this too. So, whatever. I pray to a single God, just completely outside of the construct of any man-made religion, right? But think about a celebrity that dies. How many people love a celebrity? Well, Jesus, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people love celebrities, and they still get killed in car wrecks. They still take drugs and die in elevators. The movie Groundhog Day had a beautiful thing about Bill Murray trying to save a bum, and he kept trying to save him and save him and save him, and he kept feeding him and taking him to a doctor and getting him cleaned up, and he still dies in the alleyway every single day. And, Bill's character learned that when it's your time, that's it. Now, I don't particularly believe that, anything is written in stone like that, but I don't think that we are sitting inside of some arena where the referees are angels and demons, or we're the ball and they're the players, and we're in this tug of war between good and evil the whole time. Without opposites, we have no choices, right? How can you choose good if there's no bad? How can you enjoy a nice warm summer afternoon if you don't know what it is to be in an Arctic winter? How can you appreciate being in love if you haven't been completely isolated and unloved? If you were to create the universe from scratch and you wanted to have the beauty that we have today, you would soon realize that you would have to create some faction that the occupants of your world will eventually curse you for creating and call demons. Now, I know what some of you think. Some of the accusations are very light-handed, and it's actually kind of more palatable. Aliens sometimes get the classification of demons because the theory is very simple. Anything that pulls you away from a Christian white God, right? Remember, God's white. You've seen the Michelangelo painting. Jesus is white. You've seen it, right? It's unbelievable that we read a Bible that says he's Jewish, and then he shows up like Charlton Heston's handsome son. I mean, hopefully the logic is just peeling away for you, so you can really join the universe as it truly exists without these blinders of hatred and elitism. But some people say that aliens are demons because anything that takes you off the path of pure dedication means that they are a Luciferian, demon-based storyline. The reason why religion is under attack in this world is because religion is the last frickin' bastion where morality is preserved and taught. And that is why it still has value in our world, as screwed up as it might be. However, it doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's useful. That's all. So for me, I could give a fuck if anybody thinks an alien is a demon. That is sort of like saying, I think my couch talks to me. Knock yourself out, man. You're really almost doing no harm. If you think your couch talks to you, you're really not doing me any harm. But the problem with taking an alien race and demonizing them here on Earth with a bunch of horseshit, man-made paradigms, it's almost like a virus that just grows on everything. Christianity just kind of grows on everything and infiltrates everything and makes everything negative. Now, some of you are very positive human beings and you see it in the opposite light. You think it makes everything shine better. But you still believe you're the chosen one and no one else is unless they follow your particular sect of fucking Christianity. That's what's so sick about it. Someone in the Catholic Church says if you weren't baptized at birth, you better haul ass to get yourself baptized or you're going to die. You go to a non-denominational Christian church, well, they'll say you pick the time, you study all the baptism segments out of the Bible, and then we'll baptize you. You go to the Latter-day Saints, Mormons, and they'll say no one else has authority to baptize you but us, and we have heaven figured out. Then you talk to a Jehovah's Witness, and you realize that there's a mentally insane group of people out there. For me, the Jehovah's Witness it's like it's formed out of, MK Ultra test subjects or something. Really nuts. There was the Russian guy that came out with this no forest on flat earth theory, which fell ironically flat on his face, thank fucking God. But what if this accusation that aliens are demons were to grow in some fanatical future of ours, some idiocracy future? But they weren't. They weren't that way. Weren't remotely associated with anything man-made. Imagine showing up at someone's house and someone has told a story about your people and everyone's looking at you strange. The children run away from you. They hide, they scream, they cry when you come into the room. And, you haven't done anything to anyone. But some right-wing Christian fundamentalist who can't make sense of their own life, who are perhaps so toxified by whatever the hell they're addicted to eating and consuming that their brain isn't working right. And they, instead of dealing with their own issue, they scapegoat out a theory and they attach it to you. Maybe your race, maybe where you're from in the world. Maybe Irish people are suddenly bad people because someone in New Jersey can't deal with smokestacks. It wouldn't be your fault, but you'd be demonized. Literally, right? I don't know about you, but if aliens exist, I sure as hell like to meet them. And I sure as hell would not... I would not like to experience the lack of meeting them because a bunch of self-loathing people are blaming the aliens for what's their problem in the end. The last person who posted this on my Facebook feed, in their feed, in my home feed or whatever, has never posted anything about aliens before. But she posts all kinds of Christian-based things constantly. And they're harmless. They're fine. But she was able to instantaneously adopt the theory that aliens are demons because the paradigm has been completely set up in her mind. I plead with everyone who believes this kind of shit to grow up. There's a whole new world out there if you'll just take the step to exit the old world. When you're a kid and you grow up and you've never been to school, you're terrified of kindergarten. And then after the first day, when your parent picks you up, you don't want to leave. You've discovered a whole new world, a whole new friends. You've discovered that you have value as a unique being. And then you get into school. And you get scared of the outside world. You get scared of being completely independent, paying your own bills. Becoming good at something, becoming creative, or whatever the hell it is you want to do. You're afraid of failing, maybe, so you don't want to even try. And so you try to stay inside the institutions of education. Maybe you just go get as many PhDs as you can get, never having to do anything besides maybe teach and repeat what you've learned, right? A lot of celebrities have put off having children, like Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty said something really amazing when he had his first kid. He said, the greatest gift from God is making sure that we can't understand how wonderful having a child is until we have one. Because if we knew how wonderful having a child was, we'd be pregnant just as soon as we could. We'd have children just as fast as we can. And I thought that was one of the most brilliant statements, because it's true if you're prone to be a parent. But you're single, you go through all these struggles, you become involved in a relationship, whole nother group of struggles. You have children, a whole nother group. Then you have grandchildren, and there's a whole nother group. And then you perish, and that's a whole nother set of experiences, right? Isn't it frustrating when someone answers a question with a question? Well, that's how I feel when I try to talk about reality and someone says, well, the Bible said, ba, 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 ba. Yeah, is that how aliens became demons? You can't use fiction to address reality unless there's some metaphorical connection. But at that point, you should be aware that you are speaking in metaphors. You're not really talking about grown-up land. Now, if you think the world is completely bitchin', right? You think there's nothing to fucking change whatsoever, then by all means, stick to your fictional game of existence. But if you think that we need to have some parents come in here, some adults come in here, some people with wisdom and not just knowledge, right? Wisdom is knowledge experience. That's where you filter out the horseshit advice you were given in your lifetime. Then I hope you will find it a priority to take everything that you believe, as I've said in several episodes, push it outside the box and slowly bring everything back in and take a chance to look around to validate it into the truth pile. And do not open that book called the Bible to determine whether or not something is true or something is false. Simply exist, would you? And I'm the kind of person that'll tell someone to read the Bible cover to cover. Do it several times. Because you can't be an authority in something if you haven't tried to read it, right? Everyone I've ever dated who was religious, when I asked them, have you read the Bible one time all the way through? No. Well, okay. Out of a percentage of 100, what percent of the Bible have you read? What an interview revealed less than 20%. Of the 20% they read, how much do you remember of the 20% you read? Nothing. They wanted a one-size-fits-all nutshell solution to the universe. At that point, that person's value to our world is very, very limited. It doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they don't know anything about what they believe, but they think they do, and I think that's very interesting. In my lifetime, the only credible thing I've ever heard is the Roswell crash story, based on the tremendous amount of interviews from people that have never met each other, who corroborate each other's stories, the consistency in the tone and arc of everything that they reported to have happened, meaning you don't have one person that says, oh, there was a little gray alien and fucking fire came out of his eyes and his ass at the same time, and he burned up my dog, and he raped my dad. Of course, that's always what they do. And then someone else says, no, he was really pleasant and nice and didn't speak any English, but he talked to us through telepathy. All the stories jive, and the interviews go on for, 80 years. How's that possible if they're all telling a lie? How do you sync up all your stories? How do you sit inside interviews where people are drilling you and drilling you and drilling you? What do you call up your friend and go, well, what did you say? No, these people are answering these questions on the fly. The questions don't seem prepared. The questions I would personally ask, and I think that's pretty hard to match. And they're consistent. And there were no demonic behaviors. In fact, they were very vulnerable. The one that lived, that Ramey's talked about living and walking around with him, was said to be very humble and very sad. And so Ramey's matches the 8-year-old kid that was on site who said he saw the same being and that he communicated with him briefly when the little boy finally figured out that it wasn't a doll, that it was real, when he put his hand on his leg and he realized it moved, and he jumped up because he was like, oh my God, this thing's real, and he runs behind his uncle's legs and looks through, like we do when we're little kids. I think, in just closing here, I think it's funny that man's hubris is such that we believe that we could identify the devil and beat him. Because the definition of the devil and all of his minions and all of his demons and what have you is that they exist in a realm that you don't exist, that I don't exist, which means that they have enlightenment that we don't have. Remember? They can see more than we can see. We're going to outwit these guys? What, are you kidding me? We would have fallen a long time ago. But I also guarantee you this war between, angels and demons would have raged by now. Raged by now. What angel could sit idly aside and watch a nuclear bomb go off in this world? What angel could sit aside while shock and awe is helping the Bush administration look like they got a pair of balls? None. They couldn't do it. They wouldn't do it. So let's do ourselves a favor, right? Let's not pass this one on. If you think you've got the drop on aliens being demonic and all this other stuff, be very, very specific in the comments, all right? Spare me biblical passages to give me the fucking definition of how this is even possible, because if you're a Christian on planet Earth, you are in one of the fastest shrinking religions on this planet if things don't change. Doesn't necessarily equal the fact that you're wrong or anything, but think about it. A good Christian is just a good person. It follows good rules and doesn't get up other people's asses and doesn't kill people and follows the 10 Commandments. But we all are flawed, aren't we? Right? I had about a 3-hour conversation with a friend of mine a couple weeks ago about saving your soul. And it was really, really revealing, because I essentially got him to the point where there's no way he could meticulously save his soul fast enough before he dies to actually go to heaven. Because in the microsecond of his last confession, between that moment and death, he will have an impure thought or something. Then he's damned to hell, because that's how he fucking rolls, right? Well, there you go. There's your redo of our aliens, demons. I don't give a fuck about the accusations personally, about why people think that they're demons. It's an absurd accusation against an innocent party, simply because someone has created a house of cards made of complete bullshit called Christianity to then spread like a virus over other people, right? It's all invented from scratch. It's a scapegoat mechanism at the highest level. And we just need to deal with the fact that we have instincts that are pretty intense sometimes. DeepThoughtsRadio.com for all the feeds. There's audio if you're on video. There's video if you're on audio. It's iTunes, Google Play, vid.me, YouTube. Just always search on Deep Thoughts Radio with a little radio at the end. The Facebook link is at the very, very top of the DeepThoughtsRadio.com page. The feeds are there, always accessed from your mobile device. If you want an RSS, podcast reader to understand it, if you come in from your desktop, it will not understand such things. Then again, if you're coming from a desktop, why not watch the video? Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next non-demonized Deep Thoughts.